Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Welcome,
Morning.
welcome to our roundtable discussion. Okay, so let's start with our discussion. I'll ask you. Uh, let's talk about the misconceptions about the design subject. So, please tell us one word or phrase that you usually hear from our parents about the subject. So let's start with you, Richard.
I would say probably, why do we do design? That's what they normally ask. Why do we need it?
Why do we need design? Okay, about you?
Particularly from sort of the grade six parents, because in Asia they don't. I mean, design isn't a huge sort of subject, not just in China but also in other parts of Asia. It's usually what is design.
What is design? Okay, Paul.
Yeah, I'm going to add on to what Richard has said, and it is, for me, it's the same question: why? It is that why do we need to have this subject? And I think a lot of times parents think, but in the other schools and even in some other countries, this is not a subject that students study. So the why.
Vlad.
Again, very similar. I would say between the two questions are definitely the most repeated the most often, and it is what is the design all about, and the second one is like where can we get the textbook for this subject?
Textbook.
So those are definitely the most repeated questions or asked by the parents.
So how do you respond to those questions? What do you say to parents?
I'd say that, well, there are textbooks, and you can get textbooks,
Yeah.
but we don't strictly use one. We've got a great department with many experienced teachers, so we get the unit, and we all plan together, we collaborate, and we make our own kind of textbook. So we develop all the resources that we need as a department. We collaborate and develop them all together. So that is a fantastic resource that we as a department can have. So there are textbooks, but we don't really use them within the MYP as such.
Jane?
So when I'm asked what is design, it's simply where art meets science. It's almost giving art purpose. I mean, the purpose of art is to invoke emotion in people, whereas design is you create this fantastic looking piece, this design piece, but it also has a further function that makes your life better.
So responding to the why do we have to study design? I think if we look around us, everything around us is built or designed or made. Then in schools we study sciences, maths and languages and so on. But design is the subject where students have the opportunity to actually put this knowledge that they have into practice and come up with solutions. So yeah, it's the practical application of their knowledge. So in that sense, design is a subject that lends itself very much to the interdisciplinary nature of learning.
We will go back to that in a couple of moments. But Vlad, so how do you respond to the questions?
It's usually a twofold answer to what is design all about. One is very similar to James' answer. It's where art meets science with a little bit of other subjects as well. The second answer that I usually give, or the short one, the most concise one, is that design is about solving problems. Each of our units is a problem that students need to deal with. And in general, as Paul mentioned, everything around us is designed. Some of it poorly, some of it more or less successfully. So why do we need design? Because there are lots of problems that we need to solve.
Actually, a lot of people or a lot of designers say that design is a discipline and a concept that uses critical thinking, inquiring, and creativity to find solutions. So let's go to the academic part of this one. So in the MYP, design is treated as one of the 8 subject groups. Meanwhile, in the design technology in the diploma program, so it's part of the group 4 sciences. Why is it treated differently, and why is this significant? So Vlad mentioned about interdisciplinary part. So how is design associated and integrated into other disciplines? Okay, Jamie?
I mean, design never fits really anywhere. It's that kind of, we're a bit of an oddball sort of subject in that way, because we are part art, we are part science, we are part maths, and it's like Paul said, you know, where we pull all these different things together to create a product, and we apply the knowledge that they learn in these other subjects. We're kind of a place where they can pull all of this together, all that they've learned. And there's people who you'll point this out to, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember doing that in physics. And you're like, yeah, so use that knowledge you've got on this product here. And because of that, it's very hard to categorize design as a particular wing, particular sort of subject group area. I mean, we're in sciences at the diploma level because it is kind of a scientific way of finding things. You know, if you're designing an experiment or trying to push the next sort of scientific revolution or medication, you've got to come up with all these sort of ideas and hypotheses, research, plan the experiment and do it. If you come up with a new product, you've got to research the background behind it, design it, create it, and then test it. It's a similar sort of process.
How about in the MYB? Richard? Yeah, I mean, because Jamie mentioned about the diploma program part of the design, but in the MYB, I know it's more about the basics or the fundamentals of design. So, why is that so?
Well, when you're learning something new, like design, it's very hard to design without any previous knowledge of how things like materials work. So you have to go through the fundamentals, how to tool. If you don't know how to cut something, or what happens to that when you cut it, or how to form it, then you've got no idea what you can do with it as a designer. How you can use that material or system or way of doing something in a different way. So you're constantly trying to learn about, there's so many new materials that come out, smart materials and different ways of doing things, that you're constantly learning different ways of trying to create. So the students have to understand before they can really design what these things do and how they do them. So from the younger ones going up, it's important that they learn about workshop skills, about material properties and how they function. So building that into the curriculum, so when they get to DP or grade 10, they actually don't have to think so much about what they're doing. They can think more about the design. So they understand the concepts behind the processes and the materials. So their designing takes over rather than worrying about how to do it and what it's able to do.
Right. You mentioned something about curriculum. So in the MYP, I understand that there are 4 criteria. So Vlad, would you want to speak about that?
Yes, please. That is exactly what I wanted to add to what Rich just said, and he pretty well explained the basics and the need for the basic skills that the students need to gain throughout the middle school. When it comes to the criteria, they're actually based, and the design in general, the concept of the design is based on the design cycle, and that is one of the things why we see it mostly as with focus on the process in the middle school. Design cycle being a natural cycle how we deal with problems. So 4 criteria. The first one is about research. Second one about planning how to solve the problem. Third one, creation of the solution. And the last one is about reflecting on how well did we solve the problem. And if you think about it, it is how we tackle every single problem, consciously or subconsciously, that is put in front of us, right? So if your phone stops working, you will think about the cause. Why did it eventually stop working, right? You will do some basic research, how to fix it, where to take it to be fixed. Do some basic planning, how to get there. Take the phone there, eventually they will fix it for you, you will get it, and then you will reflect once you start using it again. Are you satisfied or not with the final result? So it can be applied to absolutely anything. And I think that is one of the most important things in the MYP design, and why why is it so important for the students to understand the design cycle and the process, how things function.
Well, I would like to ask you a question about the design cycle. So, Vlad mentioned research, one. The second one is problem solving, creating solution, and reflection. So, in those 4 criteria, so which is the most exciting for you, and then for the students, perhaps?
I would, for me personally, I love the coming up with ideas, getting them to generate as many ideas as possible, not just the first thing they think of. Because sometimes that's a good idea, sometimes it develops into something. So learning how to think on paper is important. And then I've always found that kids and older kids absolutely love making things, anything. So the important thing is making something that's worthwhile. But generally, in the workshop, making things is always exciting. When you've physically made something with your own hands, and then you have it afterwards, even for us, there's a sense of achievement, and it's great. And then when they take that home and show their parents, look, I made this, then that's wonderful.
Right.
So developing ideas and making, for me, is the highlight.
The most exciting, the highlight.
I want to add something about Sir Ken Robinson. I think many of us know Sir Ken Robinson and his ideas around creativity. But he and I'm going to paraphrase, but he said something about schools kill creativity and they teach it out of the students. So they lose that creativity. And I think the MYP design is an answer or a solution to try and bring that back, that creativity back into learning and into teaching. So I think that's a really important aspect of MYP design. But for me as well, it's the stage B, the developing feasible designs, and so like what Richard has said, where the students can start sketching and drawing, and it's their preference whether they want to do it on pen and paper or whether they want to do it graphically, and so it's their choice. But that's where the creativity comes out, and it's the fun part. It's really the fun, enjoying part of the design cycle.
You see a lot of light bulb moments there.
Yes. And sometimes there's a lot of success, and sometimes the work doesn't look all that great. But if you look beyond how it looks, you can see the thinking, and the kid just doesn't know how to draw maybe sometimes, but you can see the great ideas behind that. So it's
But
really good.
I think that goes on from what you're saying there, where schools kill creativity. I mean, when they come to us in grade 6, and it's the same throughout our entire sort of school career, we're told that you have to get 10 out of 10 to get the best mark. In design, it's not so much that kind of thing. It's you can make mistakes. And if you don't make those mistakes in design, when you're working, like you said, with a different material for the first time, you don't learn the sort of the breadth of where you can go with it. So we've almost got to train them that, do you know what, it's all right to fail. If you do fail doing this, that's okay. But as long as you can reflect on it and move forward, I like to call it failing forward. When you fail, you learn, you move on. So we build resilience as well, a huge thing. We've got to build up that resilience in them. It's a hard thing for especially grade 6s to overcome, to sort of like have this fear taken out of them, trained out of them almost.
We were talking about the light bulb moments and the activity. So please share some examples of how problem solving, critical thinking, and interdisciplinary connections are manifested in design, at least in your classes in the past semester, past year. There's a lot.
Yeah. So I'll, with DP,
Yes.
I like to throw in like a lot of throwaway design tasks, which are very skills based. So if a student has never used a particular material, or they haven't used a particular machine before, like the laser cutter, for example, we'll do a little task with them where they learn to use the software, how to put it through the laser cutter, and then when it comes out, it doesn't really matter if it was successful. The fact of the process is that they've gone through it and they understand it. Now what you'll get with that is, the majority of them will do okay. They'll come out with a decent product at the end of it. But the product that I did with my DP this year was a bookmark, and one of them came out the size of this table.
Bookmark the size of
Yeah.
this.
So they'd obviously got the measurements wrong whilst they were designing, sort of thing. But you can use that as a learning process. And you come out and you've got this massive bookmark with them, and like, which book are you putting this in, sort of thing. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I understand what I did there, kind of thing. So you kind of see those sort of moments.
Actually, one thing that always amazes me, like children now, they grow up with technology, right? They're born with a cell phone in their hand. Yet sometimes you take them to the workshop and you show them the laser cutter or the 3D printer, and they're like, wow! It's like they couldn't imagine this thing could possibly work like that.
Yeah.
Yet they have technology daily, and they've grown up with it and they live with it. So that is always a bit of a surprise to me, that they're like, wow! You know?
How about you, Paul?
Something simple but very important, I think, is the mathematics behind what they are envisioning, and then what they are drawing, and then what they want to make. And our students are very proud and good at mathematics, I think, in testing and exams and so. But I often find that when I ask them to measure something, they don't know how to measure that. And if I give them a ruler and I say, give me the dimension in millimeters, they stuck. I mean, these kids are good at math, but then when it's practically, now use it, simply, what is the measurement of that piece of the paper? And I want it in millimeter, and they're like, And so then I show them how to use the ruler and, you know, go from centimeter into millimeter, and it's like they kind of know it, but they don't have the confidence to actually apply it. And once I show it and work with them, it's like, okay, now they get it. And that's when I feel, oh, the knowledge of mathematics starts going into practice and they start applying it. So there, for me, I see quite a bit of light bulb moments happening all the time when it goes from, you know, taking the math and we applying it.
Vlad?
A very similar experience with in Paul's case. Some basic things, it's surprising on one side how creative they can be and successfully solve problems, but then again being stuck with things that technically you should take as granted. So practical application from some other subjects, and I think that is the great showcase how of the interdisciplinary nature of design, where different subjects get woven into the structure, but the practical application is required. That is where students get to practically apply what they learn in math or science, physics, chemistry. It doesn't matter because of the plethora of units and final results that they're asked to deliver throughout the MYP and DP.
设计课在6年级的时候，我们做的是一个像一个旗帜一样的东西，然后这个旗帜呢，其实就是表达自己的一种对于一种社会或者是对于一种民族的这种情感的一个方式。然后比如说我当时做的，我记得是我画了一个中国的那个鸡的形象，因为这个其实就是对我自己中国身份的代表，也同样是可以帮助我引出一个更好的作品。然后在7年级的时候呢，我们其实是为鼎石的体育的各个队伍设计了一个那样的徽章，然后最后会在全年级的里面选出来1到2个，最后呢利用到真正的体育比赛中，所以这个其实是一个很有意义的事情。之后在8年级，因为是疫情，所以我们并没有创作像老师一开始设计好的内容。然后其次呢，就是我们最终选择的是去做一个像疫情期间的记录册一样，然后记录的其实就是我们在疫情期间的生活以及自己的独特思考。现在在9年级呢，我们是在做一个那样的视频，然后是将一个原本非常经典的那样的童话故事，以我们自己的思维还有自己的思考去创作一个新的那种主旨，然后从而以自己的方式去把它表达出来。比如说我们班有的人选择了去画画，有的人选择了去剪辑视频，有的人也选择了去亲自演出，所以这其实也锻炼了我们各方面的能力，也是对我们各个比如说视频剪辑，然后手工制作，然后以及批判性思考等方面的一个整体的一个提高。
Jamie, I remember last semester one of your summative tasks for the grade 8 unit was the building time. Could you talk more about that one?
Yes, the Time Flies task is to design and create a wall clock that hangs on the wall. So we were in online learning at the time, which presented its own particular challenges. considering that we are a practical subject and they have to make a product and they were making them in their home sort of thing.
Right.
So, I mean, the idea is that they design a new clock or a new looking clock. I've got some on the wall over there. And we try to integrate the laser cutter. We try to integrate some hand cutting techniques as well to put them all together. Slightly different in last semester because obviously we're online. So it was down to the pupils in their homes to gather materials together. Now we couldn't do a working clock in the end sort of thing, but what we did was sort of a final stage prototype of a model where they actually sort of cut all the parts out of cardboard. I did a load of tutorial videos where they managed to sort of put them together and they all come out with a really good looking clock, decorated it and everything. One particular student though took it on himself to go above that, and he actually created a full-size grandfather clock out of cards, and he sent me a picture of it and I was just like, wow, that's incredible.
Paul, I remember some of your students are working on a magazine about design.
Yes.
And could you talk more about that?
Yeah, it's called We Design. It's going to come out in the next few days. The interesting part of that is that it's all girls. It's an all-girl team. And often I think there's a bit of a misconception that design is, the boys are the strong ones in design and so, but really it's a bit of a misconception. In this case, the girls are really strong in design. Last year, when they were in grade 7, and I taught them, they did really well in class, and they were always kind of coming up with new ideas and like, teacher, but can we go doing this and can we do that? And then like, well, I asked you to do this and this, but if you want to go, further, by all means. And so they came up with their idea to put their passion for science and design together in the magazine called We Design. But it's interesting that they make the connection between, it's not just design as a standalone subject area. They do bring it in. And so this magazine that's coming out and the articles, it involves design articles, it involves math, it involves science articles, but also the connection and how they support. So it's good. I can see that some of the students, they make those connections. I say some of the students, probably most of the students make those connections. But in this case, I think the passion comes out and they move forward with the magazine.
And the way that they present the magazine as well, right? Because it's in English.
It is in English,
Yes.
yes. Yeah.
We were just talking about the laser cutter, so that's our. I would like to ask you about that one because the design curriculum focuses on a holistic design process. Meanwhile, the design technology curriculum aims at fostering the skills development in students. So, in this case, a school's design facility or equipment is really crucial. So, tell us more about the laser cutter workshop and other facilities, equipment that we have here at Eastern.
We started off with one laser cut, actually. It was in here. It was in here when we first arrived. And it was the older version of the laser cutter in there. And when I first arrived, I really wanted to design a project that used the laser cutter. So I started looking at chairs, and I wanted to use a material that was sustainable-ish, sustainable, that we could look at environmental issues as well. So I was trying to combine everything with the laser cutter and sustainability, but making something that was kind of like a bigger item. So I'm a furniture designer. That's what I studied at university, designing furniture for small spaces. So I wanted to make this chair, but it was a slot together thing. And I hadn't used the laser cutter that much. It was traditional handmade stuff. So I really wanted to get on the laser cutter and use it myself.
Yeah.
So we started off using laser cutter and learning by doing and things catching on fire and putting them out. And then as the project developed, and the idea was to use something that wasn't structurally that strong. So they had to really think about how they were going to develop this chair into something that could take a person's weight and not fall down. So that was the thinking behind it. How can you use some material that is particularly throwaway? Because I really wanted to use recycled cardboard, but getting enough recycled cardboard that was flat was hard work. So we ended up buying in cardboard, which is not the best way to go, but you know, it was a means to an end. And the project took off really well, so I was really happy with it. And the students really got the idea of making this cardboard structurally sound. We now have 2 laser cutters, and we're going to get like another one. And there's some great software, so you model it 3D on your computer. You can use Fusion 360, or there's a simpler version of 3D modeling called Tinkercad. Try and develop it in Fusion, and then you put it into a slicer, and then it actually slices up your 3-dimensional object into flat 2D shapes that can slot together. So that was great. So they could actually see from beginning to end, developing the idea, playing around with the cardboard, you know, folding it, scrunching it, tearing it, seeing how it functioned, to thinking, oh, we can never sit on this, to making little models, starting putting it together, seeing how it was more sound. And then making like full-size chairs. So we made a few full-size ones, but they took like hours and hours and hours to make one. So we ended up scaling them down. But there's a few examples in the corridor of bigger versions. So yeah, that was a great project. So that's using the laser cutter for big scale things. But then we use it for many different applications in many different projects. So I like to give the students the options of making their product in any way that we've got. So, like you said, what facilities do we have? So we have the traditional workshops, 3D printing. We have so many 3D printers around school, and laser cutters. So they really have the option. So that's what I was going back to, their knowledge of machines and processes and materials.
The fundamentals.
But then they can choose how they're going to make their product. So they choose whether, we're doing clocks at the moment, so they can choose whether they're going to 3D print their hands, whether they're going to laser cut the dials, how they're going to do it. So they have a functioning knowledge of that. But that's kind of like a nice beginning to it, beginning with the chair catching on fire.
So in the MIP, we give the students the opportunities to work with the different resistant materials, plastics, wood, and so on, and with the different machines and processes. And then, Jamie, you guys in the diploma program, then the kids come into the diploma program with some knowledge of materials and processes and tools and so on, and then you specialize more and you go deeper into those areas.
Vlad, so what's the equipment or facility that you use in your class?
Well, we are proud to say that we have probably one of the best design departments in Beijing when it comes to the resources that we are allowed to use, starting with this wonderful space that is at our disposal, 2 fully equipped workshops, and several other machine rooms, let's put it that way. So our classrooms are equipped at this point with 3D printers. Each and every classroom has several 3D printers. We also recently got large size 3D printers as well that are either in classrooms or one of the 3D printing rooms, besides the laser cutters that Richard mentioned. Workshops are pretty much equipped with standard equipment that you would find in any workshop that allows our students, as Paul mentioned, to use all different kinds of materials, from wood to plastic to metal to glass. There's really a lot that they can get exposure to, and we like giving them those options. So this is what you have at your disposal. What would you like to do? What would you like actually your final product to look like? So they get to go through whole different sets of skills, building up different sets of skills in order to finish their projects throughout MYP, and then bring that to DP and actually develop furthermore or apply more specifically depending on the project. Besides that, we're just now in grade 10 also working on the chocolate unit that will require the students to 3D model their solution that will then be 3D printed. Then those 3D printed options are molds will be used on the vacuum former to vacuum form the final mold for the chocolate bar that they are developing, while researching about inequality in chocolate manufacture and trying to understand how to help closing the gap, or at least decreasing the gap through fair trade.
So we're asked to create a chocolate bar and a chocolate packaging that advocates for the idea of fair trade. So in many parts of the world, especially in Africa, the cocoa farmers are actually discriminated by the international corporations who are selling the chocolate. So through designing our packaging, we're going to educate our customers, which is a Keystone community, about fair trade and advocate for more people to buy fair traded chocolate in order to improve the welfare of these African farmers.
So there's a lot of different real-life connections in there while working with tools and trying to understand different or let's say real-life topics or issues that we are facing.
Okay, so our next topic, we have 3 questions, but they're all interrelated. So, what's the progression in the design course from the middle school to high school, all the way to college? And how does knowledge and competency in design help students choose their university majors? And are there any non-conventional career prospects associated with design? So, I'd like to.
Like the guys have been saying, I mean, MYP is about building those skills. It's like giving all the pupils a toolkit. So they've had an experience of 3D printing, they've had an experience of laser pen, they've used traditional hand tools, they've used the machines in the workshop as well. Hopefully we'll build on that on the next couple of years as well, so we've got even more manufacturing techniques that they can use. So when they come up to diploma level, they've literally got all this knowledge that they can apply. Now, the sort of like the bigger difference between MYP and DP is that MYP is quite structured in the sort of the actual projects that they do. So Criterion A, they have to do this, and this, and they will get a good mark. Same with the B, where they're designing, they have to do X amount of ideas, pick one and plan it. In DP, it becomes less structured. You still have to do research in Criterion A, but it's very much, right, this is your problem that you have to solve. Identify what you want to do as the research. So there's about 20-25 research tasks that they can choose from. They've got to identify them and give reasons why they're suitable for this project. Criterion B then, where they're designing, it's not a case of you've got to do 4 ideas, it's a case of you've got to come up with a range of ideas. You've then got to model them, you've then got to test pieces. So even in Criterion B, they're manufacturing parts, so they'll use the laser cutter to test if something will fit together, if it will cut out right. They will 3D print a part to see if that bit fits to make that model. And Criterion B is almost like building, like growing this product to a final stage, so that in Criterion C they can make the working prototype and they can test it in Criterion D. It's quite a jump in thinking, and we call it design thinking. So we've given them all these tools in MYP, and DP then sort of like, right, this is now how you need to think about it. Then going into sort of university, it jumps up again. So once you get there, the universities, you know, they think that you've got all this ways about you, sort of thing. So they will come in, they will lecture and they will guide, but it is very much up to you to go through the projects and come up with the final product. You're almost kind of, to an extent in university, almost left to your own devices in that sort of sense. It's very much on you, so you have to build that discipline in diploma level as well. So once they get there, it's a bit of a jump again, but they don't just, oh my god, what's going on kind of thing.
And also, like in the diploma program, so there's the high level design technology and standard level. So could anyone discuss or explain the differences between these two?
That's on me.
That's on you. That's on you.
Yeah. So the main project differences is MYP is Criterion A through D for their project work. In DP, it's the same for standard level, so A through D, but for high level, it's A through F. So E and F are additional units that are added on. E is adapting the product to be manufactured. So what they will make here in the workshops is fine for a one-off prototype that they will test, but then they've got to decide how they would change the manufacture of that product, how they would change the materials of that product, so that they could send all this information down to someone in Guangzhou or Shenzhen and go, look, I need 10,000 of these made. And so that they can have a profitable product that they can then start selling. And that's what F is. Once you've got this product that you can put on the market, it's how do you get it from being an invention to innovation. And innovation is taking that product from being this one-off prototype to getting it out there and making a profit and getting it to the right audience as well. Because obviously you can put a product on somewhere like Taobao or JD, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get to the person you made it for. So how are you going to target that person? On top of that, then there's the theory element, which we don't really have in MYP, and we try to bring parts of it in wherever we can in the projects that we got in the units. But there are 10 different theory topics. SL does 6 of them, HL does 10. There are various ones. There is human factors and ergonomics, so how, like us sitting here, for example, this table and these stools are the right sort of size and the right shape for us. We can sit here comfortably. You've got raw material to production, so how do we make plastics? How do we make metals? How do they get from the earth? How do they process them and then they get into our workshops, for example? The high level elements then is that invention to innovation, and how do you get it to the markets? User-centered design as well. How do you make sure that the product that you are making is the best product for your person or the market that you're aiming it at to use? Apple's a fantastic example of doing that. I mean, they're all about user interface, and their design, like literally holding the phone in your hand has to feel comfortable. Using the apps has to be comfortable. Even that sort of element comes into it as well. So there's a huge step up in terms of theory in particular.
我为什么选择这门课的话，我觉得是因为，这门课会让我的 DP 生活更丰富多彩。因为我不想说我 DP 的六门课在这2年里面都是局限于课堂里面书本上的，所以我觉得这是一个不同的视角去学习、去上课、去思考的方式。而且我觉得在就是写东西之外，我们还有这种实操的能力。就是我们的手工以及我们这种实验操作能力都会大大的提高，而且我们的发散性思维也会被无限的扩大。我们现在这个单元正在做的一个项目就是为一个在北京开的外国餐厅做一个中秋节的装饰，然后最好能够将中国文化和它的本地文化进行一个很好的结合。然后我的这个是一个茶展，灵感启发是受到了宋代的时候他们的那种茶展的一个启发，然后它是有一些中国元素在里面的，就比如说它的这个6个边，每个边我都是有这样的一个花纹，然后这些花纹是从传统图样里面摘下来的，然后还有它的底座是一个镂空的这种井字格，所以它也某种程度上代表了中华文化的一些图腾的传递。然后它还是一个多功能的茶展，就我们希望它不仅可以作为中国人的茶展可以用，但同时在不同的季节里、不同的节日上面，不仅局限于中秋节，它同样可以作为一个果盘，也可以作为一个放蜡烛和灯的一个小器皿。所以我觉得这还是一个挺好玩的。这一门课它对我们的影响可能不仅仅局限在设计这门课上，但同时也会影响到其他的课。就我觉得设计课它实际上会是 DP 生活一个不同的，它会让我们从另外一个角度去思考学习本身，就是学习不仅局限于书本，同样在生活当中，在任何一个地方我们都能发现设计的美，同样也能发现学习的美。
So let's talk about the career prospects. So Jamie talked about like the differences between the HL and SL, but the additional part is more about the theories and telling the students these are the ideas that you have to learn as well, right? So, the career prospects. So, are there any non-conventional prospects associated with design? Because people might say, okay, so design could be architecture, engineering.
I mean, I guess it's kind of endless. You could, entrepreneurially, you can have any idea you like. As a designer, you can rapid prototype or manufacture it in some way, and then you can take it to market all off your own back. You don't need to have be pigeonholed into a career like architecture or engineer. You can make your own future in whatever way you particularly have a passion for. So that's kind of the great thing about design, is it is open to so many different avenues of, opening up your future. So I think so many.
I would like to add that once design relies a lot on creative and critical thinking, and it is something that both of those skills are life skills. So it is something that is very important that can be applied in so many areas, and that is what we are trying to teach our students throughout the middle school, throughout the high school. And it is again something that can boost their entrepreneurial spirit and take them in any possible way. Once they get a grasp of that design thinking, once we look at something, once we start looking at something that doesn't necessarily feel right, as Jamie was saying, but then instead of being like, oh well, it is how it is, but no, what can I do actually? How can I make this better? How can I improve this? We all remember cell phones before the smartphones, before Steve Jobs sat down and said, well, look at all this technology that we have. We can do so much more apart from these simple Nokias that are in the market. He didn't invent anything new. Everything was there in the market. He just had this amazing idea how to improve user experience. And that's why I think, again, Jamie mentioned it was a great example, and that is exactly what we would like to see our students doing. Not necessarily be like, oh, I like this subject because I would like to study design. No, liking this subject because eventually it will make them think outside the box, that will actually make them see the world in different eyes, become problem solvers from that perspective, not necessarily, oh, there is a problem, let's go fix that. But no, it's how can I improve what I have to deal with on a daily basis. That is, I think, what is the non-conventional part that can take you pretty much anywhere.
I think, I can't remember the name of the student, but I think he started off, I think he's Dutch, something like that. And he started off doing a school project about plastic waste in the oceans and how to solve the problem. And he now is global, and the company is millions or billions. And he's taken his school project idea into how to clean up plastic waste from the oceans, and can you remember his name?
I can't remember. I know the guy you're on about. Yeah, he was 16 at the time when he came up with the idea. It was a big, massive buoy out in the ocean, which would funnel all the plastic together. He's gone on from that now. Yes. He's now got the Interceptor, which literally sits in a river and just collects all the trash as it comes down the river. And it's all automated, solar powered. It's like completely green design. And I think he's 21 now at the moment. But like what he is doing, and he did it at such a young age as well, didn't he? Is absolutely incredible. It just goes to show that you don't need to be like our age, whatever, to be a fantastic designer. Kids are actually, like, the little kids are actually some of the best designers, because it's got crazy ideas.
It's better because we hold ourselves back with these conceptions of, oh, we can't do it. If you're young, you just think you have no boundary. You just do it, and you find a way of doing it. So, I mean, it's amazing.
So I have got a few examples of students from my previous school and a few years ago, where they didn't quite follow the conventional road. Like one girl, she was interested in engineering, but she wanted to become a car designer. That was her dream. To become a car designer is quite a specialist job, and I think it's hard to get into that field. But she's actually made it. She's actually working for Pininfarina. I don't know if you guys know Pininfarina. It's an Italian design company. But the way that she went about was at school, she said she wants to go and do this. So she contacted the companies, and they said, well, got to get mechanical engineering or this kind of background first and so on. And so she came to me and she said, but they tell me that I need to have a portfolio. And so that's what we could give her. Because she had sketches, she had design work and stuff, and she had these process journals and so she was able to take some of those pieces and put it together in a portfolio, and that got her a scholarship from Brembo Brakes. Now, Brembo is a very high premium brake company, but they gave her a scholarship, and with that she went and she studied, and she went and worked for them, and then from there she moved on to work for Pininfarina now at the moment. And another story is of a student who academically struggled, but was a fantastic designer and lovely, beautiful sketches. Fashion design was what she was interested in. And she as well, she needed a portfolio to get her into London School of Fashion. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
That's what she's talking about. And she got in, and she actually left school at halfway in grade 11. She didn't complete her diploma program, but she went straight into that college with a portfolio that they accepted her based on her portfolio work, and with that she went in. And she's doing well at the moment, I know. So I kind of follow her a little bit on social media. And so she's got her own line of work that she's starting to build up. She's still working for a company, but on the side she's got her own fashion line. So there are some alternative options that come out of design.
How about your students here at Keystone? So any project, any student project that has really struck you because of this is really amazing or this is so cutting edge?
Yes. Actually, I had experience with several students who were inspired by the subject itself and the knowledge that had kind of a high enough understanding of the concept of design and how it can be applied, and who actually were expressing the wish to either continue with a specific kind of packaging design. There was a student who wanted to pursue fashion design. And there was even a student, and he was definitely one of the most successful students that I had, that actually fell in love with the design, MYP design, as a subject, as a concept, and wanted actually to pursue the career in teaching, and actually eventually return and teach the same subject. So I do think that actually we don't necessarily always know if they don't talk to us about it, but every now and then there will be a student who will be inspired, and who will be definitely, and who will be like, I really love this, and what can I do in order to achieve more or to pursue this specific career. And then once or twice we had like serious conversations with parents in what way the student should take, because at that point we were not offering DP design, so what can they do through high school, and eventually maybe even online programs in order to take them where they wanted to be in college.
You know, when we have the students work in front of us, when they're sketching and they're putting their thoughts onto paper with their concept ideas, that's often where you can see the passion coming out, or you look at, wow, like, I didn't show you that, or how do you know that? And when I start asking questions, I'm like, well, my dad's an architect. Oh, okay. Oh, my mom has an interior design company. I go like, okay, does mom and dad help you? No, not really. It's like, well, how do you know that? I look at their work. Sometimes I go to their office or something. So I think quite a few of our parents here, families, they are connected with the design field, and I think their children, they observe, they're aware, and so their passion and their knowledge transpires, and we see it in their work.
JB, would you want to add something?
I don't think it's always sort of like the cutting edge. I think it's when you're in that sort of designing and modeling stage with the pupils, and they're just in it. You know, they're just full on into it, and so you sit having a conversation with them, and you're like, right, talk me through your design. What's your thoughts here, sort of thing? And they start pulling it apart, showing you all these different parts, and they just, they're absolutely passionate about what they're putting together there. And it's important to, as teachers, sort of thing, it's important to support that and not go, I don't think that's a great idea. I think you should do this. It's just kind of suggestion. Have you thought about this or that and this? And then they just kind of go, oh, okay, and then they go off on another path then and start exploring it. But it's just, it's seeing that passion, sort of the full-on concentration, they're full-on into that little world that they're designing their product in, and they're quite happy to take on that little extra bit of advice and that guidance and try something new, and then eventually it grows into this fantastic design.
Actually, when James says that they're really into it, and they are really into it, and I've been in a workshop many times, and you're with them a lot, and you're really helping them a lot, and you're next to them. And I don't know about you guys, but so many times the kids turn around and call me dad, or sometimes granddad. So that's kind of nice because you know that they're so into it.
No, I've never had that.
Granddad.
I usually get mum for some reason.
Speaking of names, so yeah, because we know that the design teachers are called the cavemen because
why we have beds.
yeah, and also like our classrooms are in the basement. But just to get more idea about the cavemen, so Dad here is a furniture designer, right?
Yes.
Jamie,
Industrial design.
Paul,
I started teaching high school teaching, with specifically woodwork, metalwork, and plastic, so resistant materials.
and Vlad.
And IT and usage of new technologies in education.
So it's not really cavemen. It's more of like, future men, right? Do you give homework?
I think some students they work slower than other students, and so if a student works fast, we give time. We explain things in the class. I think most of us we start with a lesson with this is how things are going to be done today. We give explanations, and then we allow the rest of the time for the students to work in class. And we'll be, going around, and then if there are questions, we support the students in class. And so I found that some students finish the work. But some students, they just work slower. So it's like, when it comes to, the homework time that we have to give to the students, it's like, if you haven't finished this task, finish it at home. And so some students will get and some students will not get. And I think if parents compare, then, some parents will say, my student, my child got homework. Well, my child didn't get homework. But it's a case of, maybe Johnny works faster than that Peter.
Sorry, I can say, and sometimes it's about passion for the subject. If you look at some of the drawings in the hall, you can clearly see that they love it. So they're going to want to spend time doing something that they enjoy. That's the beauty about subjects you enjoy. It's not really like hard work.
Yeah.
So they go home and they just work for a long time, producing these amazing drawings. Are like works of art, some of them. So that's the other side of it.
Yeah,
There is no official. Sorry,
Go on.
Yeah, just want to say there is no official homework. Like there won't be like, this is your homework until the next class. That doesn't happen. It's mostly about catching up with what you didn't get to finish in class. Yeah, it all comes down to that.
I mean, I'm going to say something a little bit controversial. There are thousands of hours of research on shelves in universities around the world that state homework doesn't improve a child's grade. There are thousands, and it just sits there doing nothing. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't do homework, but what they should do is they should practice what they love. I mean, if they love drawing, give them a book and let them draw. If they love doing CAD, let them use their computer and design something new. Or if they, even Lego. I mean, Lego is a fantastic tool to use to sort of come up with creative things. If they love doing Lego, let them do Lego. Just let them be creative in their own way. And that will allow them to grow as artists and designers. If they love doing science experiments, buy them a little science kit. Just give them stuff that really pushes their passion.
Yeah. That's another thing about design. There's no right or wrong. It's just whatever you want to pursue. So that's the nice thing about it. But pursuing passions is what it's all about.
Again, like going back to what you just said then, if they're passionate about something, then push it. I mean, there is no right or wrong path in terms of design as such. If you're into history sort of thing, you may want to build things that they used to build like hundreds of years ago, like the Da Vinci Museum in Venice, for example. They built prototypes of everything that Da Vinci actually drew. He didn't make most of them, but they've got them there. So if you're interested in that sort of period and you really like to sort of bring that back, there's no reason why you can't use that as your passion. The same with linguistics. I mean, there may be sort of a path that they could go down with that in terms of translation, because if they're into that, that's what they're going to go into. I don't know what that's going to be, and we can't say that. We don't know where our designers are going to end up in the future. We don't even know what jobs they're going to be doing in 10 years because the jobs don't exist currently. It's hard for us to sort of, as teachers, go, yes, you can do it with this subject, but you can't do it with that subject. It's pulling everything together.
So it's, in other words, don't get pigeonholed like in one subject or one discipline, because as you mentioned, design can be used everywhere.
Yes.
And it's all about the passion, right?
Well, it can really go anywhere. It's like Seinfeld, the comedian, was basing a lot of his shows and sketches on the problems that we are facing on a daily basis. Like, I don't know, it was in shower, taking a shower and then having a tap that is too sensitive. So you move it a little bit to the left, it's too hot. You move it a little bit to the right, it's too cold. So he was observing those things, and that is already design thinking there. And he was gonna ridiculing them in a way. So we can go from there and then take a whole span to again, Steve Jobs, who put 2 and 2 together of what was already in the market, but he was the one, right, this is not good. Like the simplest things, before the Apple started delivering devices with the batteries charged, one of the most annoying things for Steve Jobs was buying a new device, being all excited about it and reading, oh, you have to charge it first. And he was like, well, let's change that. Like, why do I have to charge it first? No, let's charge it and then sell it to people. So, so those little things, and that is, I think, what's brilliant about design, and that is why it shouldn't be pigeonholed. It's definitely, you need to have an open mind and to constantly, in a way, apply it and think about different possibilities. So again, it's going into innovation, and it can take you anywhere from there. That's just the example about the what was the name from the guy with the ocean cleaner?
The Dutch boy.
The Dutch boy. And now cleaning the rivers. That's brilliant.
But you mentioned design thinking, and we've mentioned it a few times now.
Yes.
But design thinking is actually not a term that originated out of the engineering or out of the design field of study. Design thinking is a relatively new term that came from business, because businesses are realizing that the world is changing so quickly, so fast at the moment, and that they need different ways of thinking. And so they coined that term, design thinking. So we find design thinking kind of everywhere in life. It's one of the catchphrases that is used in different industries. So again, it doesn't matter which industry you're working in, you now need that design thinking, that problem solving, kind of using the design cycle that we're using in the NYP and DP to apply that.
Actually, we have a speaker coming in 5th of December, who is a grade 6 parent, and this is exactly what he does. He does experience design. So he's designing the experience for consumers. So he worked with Steve Jobs and Apple and many other big names, and they look at how the shop and the product interacts with the customer. So I think that's going to be really beneficial to the students to hear real life scenarios, or real life. You're talking about employment opportunities and things. This guy's working. He's got I think it's a California-based company and a Beijing-based company, and they work between the two countries.
So yeah, I actually studied culture at UCLA, and when I moved to Asia, actually is when I was able to kind of become more aware of better design, whether it was through Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, even in China. A lot of really incredible design, is in Asia, and so that's really kind of what opened my eyes to that. And when we were looking at expanding our studios into China, we thought it was a really great opportunity to kind of bring experience design to China, to the market here. Yeah, so I think design is a really great career and path and a place to study. I would say that if you're going to go into design, just try to have a broad range of experiences, and not just only focus on studying or design, but try to have a broad range of hobbies, of experiences, of friends, etc., that can give you different things to draw on when you're designing.
Yeah, you say that with the actual shop, and that comes down to sort of invisible design. Like it's stuff that you don't realize. Like the shop that they created, the Apple shop, which every technology company now has copied, kind of thing. That was designed over, I think, 3 years in like a secret airplane hangar in California. Nobody knew what was going on in this thing, but Steve Jobs used to go there with certain designers, and over 2 years they designed the Apple shop and how it should be. So he must be part of that team who started that, which is incredible.
Yeah, pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much, gentlemen and cavemen, for our wonderful discussion this morning. So really enjoyed talking to you, and also I learned a lot. I've learned a lot about design. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having
for
us.
your time.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you.
Thank you for supporting us.
Thank you.